In today's reading vlog, I'm going to be letting a spinner wheel decide what series I continue. I have not made a July TBR. This is the first month since I think September 2020 where I haven't made any kind of monthly TBR. And the reason for that is because I want to concentrate on reading series. We're going to be continuing as many series as I can in this reading vlog. And because of who I am as a person, I've decided to gamify the situation. I've loaded a bunch of series into a spinner wheel and I'm going to be letting the spinner wheel decide because I can't, okay? When I have too many options, I struggle to narrow down to just one. So in order for a series to be on this list, I've only chosen series where I actually want to read the next book. Any series that I've DNF'd are not on the list. I've also only included series where I own the next book and where I don't feel like I have to reread the series up until that point in order to continue. So there was only actually 8 series that I was able to add to this list, which feels a lot less intimidating. I've actually already filmed the first few clips for this vlog, but it has been warm the last few days. It's still warm today. I still feel like a sweaty mess, but I look less of a sweaty mess than I have the last few days. And I wanted to open the vlog by feeling somewhat presentable, okay? So we're gonna roll with it. Let me know in the comments how many series you've completed this year. I have not completed anywhere near enough, but I'm hoping that that is gonna change throughout this month. For our first spin, we landed on A Pirate's Life for Tea by Rebecca Thorne, which is the second book in the Tomes and Tea series. Book 1 is Can't Spell Treason Without Tea, which I read towards the beginning of last year and really enjoyed. I thought this was a fun, sapphic, cozy fantasy. It does have a hint of adventure and a bit more plot than you would typically find in a cozy fantasy. It's cozy in the sense that you know nothing really bad is going to happen to the characters. Very excited that I am finally getting around to book 2 because I was sent an arc of this by the publisher towards the end of last year. It came out in October 2024. The reason I didn't read this at the time is because I have this recurring problem with my head and my neck. I get neck pain basically sometimes. Reading a physical book, I don't know, it just puts pressure on my shoulders for some reason, and I find that I'm much more comfortable and in less pain when I read on my Kindle because I have a Kindle stand and I can raise it to the right height. So that's the main reason I didn't read this at the time that I got it. However, a couple of months ago, I spotted this in a 99p Kindle deal, so I snapped it up because I always intended to continue this series. The problem that I'm having is this version, the physical arc that I've got, is different to the ebook, and I don't know whether it's because this series was initially self-published. Maybe the ebook is still the self-published version, but there are chapters and perspectives in this that aren't in this version. I'm mostly reading on my Kindle, but then whenever I come across a chapter that's told from one of these other perspectives, then I'm reading it in the physical copy. In terms of a synopsis, in this first book, you're introduced to the two main characters, Raina and Kiantha, who decide to leave their stressful jobs, run away together and start a tea shop that is also a bookshop, or it might be a bookshop that's also a tea shop, but they run away together to this small town that is on the border between a few different realms, including Dragon Country. So there's a plot that starts in this book that continues into the next book, but also if you haven't read this, then I don't think it's the biggest deal. I would recommend reading the first book because it is pretty good, and I think that if you like the writing in book 1, then you're gonna like the rest of the series. But in this second book, we're continuing that plot that started in book 1, but also we're in a different part of the world. The two main characters have basically made a deal with this local councilman. He needs help with a situation. There is a pirate in this local area who is causing a bit of trouble, and in exchange he is going to help them with some information that they need. Very vague synopsis, obviously, because I don't want to go into spoilers for this particular book, or I don't want to spoil anything in the first book. What I can tell you is that this couple are playing matchmaker. So there's two women that they meet who clearly have a history together. and they're trying to help them fix their relationship. But what I really loved about the first book is how we are following an established couple. There's still conflict in their relationship that they have to overcome, but I just thought it was interesting. You don't come across that often, that type of relationship in fantasy. So yeah, I am liking this second book so far. I'm not enjoying it as much as book one. The main issue that I'm having, which I think I also had this issue in the first book, the two main characters feel like the same person. It feels like their personalities and their voice is too close. It's really warm today, so I don't know if I'm making a lot of sense, but basically whenever I'm reading a particular chapter, I can't tell who I'm reading from other than the fact that it tells me I'm reading from Chianthe or Raina. I am running out of space on my memory card, so I'm gonna keep this clip nice and short, but I will hopefully check in with you once I'm past the halfway point. I'm hoping to read a little more this evening. To the people who gave me 1-star reviews because the first book had lesbians, I doubled the lesbians in this one just for you. Is that not the best dedication that you've ever read in a book? I have now made it to the halfway point in A Pirate's Life for Tea. It doesn't look like it based on the physical copy, but according to my Kindle, I am 50% of the way through. I'm still enjoying this. A lot of the issues that I had with the writing in book one, I'm still finding in this book. I feel like sometimes it dips into telling instead of showing. Also, I do miss the small town setting from the first book, and I'm not the biggest fan of, I mean, I do like pirate books. What am I saying? It's just, I prefer the small town setting. I feel like the first one was just a little bit more cozier. Also, the humour in this feels a bit forced. I don't remember it being like that in the first book. The first book had some funny moments, but I feel like a lot of the jokes in this just aren't landing for me. So yeah, it's somewhere between a 3 and a 4 stars at the moment, but I will let you know my final rating once I finished it. I have finished A Pirate's Life for Tea by Rebecca Thorne, and I don't feel like I really have much more to say about this. I'm going to give it a 3 or a 4 stars. I haven't decided yet. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the first book, but I will be continuing the series because from what I gather, the next book is mostly going to be set back in the small town that we were introduced to in the first book, and that's what I want. When I read a cozy fantasy, I want the slice of life element, and I don't feel like that's what this is. This is more of a cozy adventure, and that's fine. The first book also had an adventure story, but it was only a hint, and most of the book was about the characters starting their own business and getting used to life in this small town, and that's why I read cozy fantasy. So yeah, it wasn't bad. It was cute and sweet. The characters in this I don't think are that memorable though, and sometimes the humour is just a little bit cringe, a bit too cheesy and corny for my personal taste. But yeah, I'm glad that I continued the series because now I know that I do want to read the next book. I think there's 4 books in this series in total. It was initially, from what I gather, meant to be a trilogy, but I think there's a 4th book that's either just come out or that's coming out soon. For our next spin, we landed on The Devil's Advocate, which is the next book that I need to read in the Eddie Flynn series. This is a crime legal thriller series, which I love. I don't know whether I can call it a favourite series yet, because I've only read 2 books, and they're not even the first 2 books. There's like 8 books in this series out at the moment, I think, and I started with book 4, which is called 13. That was the one that was recommended to me, and to be fair, you can read these books out of order. Steve Kavanagh has said himself that you don't have to read them in a particular order because he's written them to be read as standalones, and you can jump into the series at any point. So I started with 13, then I read 50/50 back in, I think, 2021. The Devil's Advocate came out in 2021 and it wasn't out at the time that I read 50/50. So I've had this on my TBR for quite a while, but I'm really glad that I'm now picking this up. I read the first 50 pages last night and remembered that when I read 13, I started reading it. Then I tried to sleep, but I couldn't stop thinking about that book. So I stayed up until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to finish it. And then I don't think I did the same with 50/50. I think I still read it in one sitting, but I started it quite early in the day, knowing that I was probably going to want to completely just absorb myself in the book. So when I started this last night, I had to make myself put the book down after 50 pages because I could feel myself getting sucked in. This is following our main guy, Eddie Flynn, who is a New York lawyer. He used to be a con man, and his whole ethos is that he will only represent people who he feels are innocent. He has to believe that they didn't actually do what they've been accused of. He's a defense attorney, in case I didn't mention that. In this book, he is contacted by this guy who I think is part of the government, and the reason this guy gets in touch is because something is happening in this town in Alabama. The district attorney there has a really high record of giving people the death penalty, and this young man, this 19-year-old black boy, has been accused of murder, and the lawyer who was representing him has gone missing. So Eddie Flynn is asked if he wants to step in and defend this guy. That's the setup for the plot. We are also getting the perspective of the district attorney as well as a local sheriff. Already it's addictive. I am gonna read some more of this tonight, and I may finish it. I decided not to stay up until stupid o'clock in the morning to finish this book. I could have. I was that addicted. I could have stayed up until like 2 a.m. to finish it, but I decided to get some sleep instead. Don't know why I bothered because I still woke up feeling exhausted, but the point is I made it 66% of the way through and I am obsessed. This is going to be a 5 stars. I'm just going to say it. I can't see any way that it's not. And I'm really annoyed that I waited, 4 years to continue this series because it's so good. I think what Steve Kavanagh does really well is he writes very competent characters. Eddie Flynn is a very competent lawyer and so is his team. The setting that they're in is obviously very different to the previous books because they're now in Alabama, whereas the other books, I think, are set in New York. I'm assuming because he's a New York lawyer. It's been a while since I read those, but the setting in this, there's so much tension there because this whole town believes that this boy is responsible. So when Eddie shows up, they are incredibly hostile. You also learn very quickly there's a lot of corruption in this town concerning the police. I have been so angry at parts of this, and it's meant to make you feel angry. That is the whole point of the book. I am really curious actually how accurate this is in terms of the justice system. I'm assuming that Steve Kavanagh has done his research. He's actually an Irish author. He does have a standalone if you're interested in trying out his work and you don't want to commit to a series. I feel like it's not really a commitment because it's been 4 years since I read the last book and I'm not struggling at all because the books are written to be standalones. But if you are looking for it's not even a standalone yet because he's released a second book in that series. Never mind. I was going to say he released a standalone a few years ago, Kill for Me, Kill for You, but he's now released a sequel to that book. So yeah, ignore what I was about to say. Apparently Steve Kavanagh just enjoys writing series. I'm going to finish this today and then I will let you know my final thoughts, but I will be shocked if this isn't a 5 stars. It will have to go very downhill in the ending. I have finished reading The Devil's Advocate by Steve Kavanagh and I am going to give this 5 stars. This was so immersive. I love the way that Steve Kavanagh writes courtroom scenes. I do wish there were a few more courtroom scenes in this. There didn't seem to be as much as in the previous 2 books. Steve Kavanagh is a lawyer, by the way. He practiced civil rights law according to his author bio. There's also a really interesting author's note that I appreciated reading. It gives a bit more context as to the research that he did while researching this book. In particular, there was a piece of research he came across by the Fair Punishment Project, which found that 5 prosecutors in the US were responsible for around 15% of the total death row population of the entire United States. And when you think of how big the US is, that number, that percentage just feels so high. You get the perspective of some truly evil people in this. I think you will have a different experience reading this if you are from the US. It was written around 2020, but the political commentary I think is still relevant today. So yeah, would recommend this series, but I would recommend reading this particular book when you're in the right headspace for it. Before our next spin, we landed on A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers, which is the second book in the Wayfarers series. The first book is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which I read earlier this year and loved. It's one of my favourite books of the year, so I was really glad when this came up. I have this on my Kindle. I think I actually have all of the books now on my Kindle because they've been coming up in 99p Kindle deals over the last few months. So I actually started this last night. I needed something a little bit lighter after finishing The Devil's Advocate, so I've already read the first 20%. I started it last night and then I continued it this morning, and I'm really enjoying this. I was a little bit nervous about picking this up because I know it follows different characters to the first book. The first book follows the crew of this ship called the Wayfarer, whereas this follows two different characters, two main characters I should say. So the first character is called Sidra, and she is an AI who has been placed in the body of a human, which is illegal. Sentient AIs aren't allowed to inhabit a physical body, so we're kind of seeing her deal with that and get used to being in this new body. I think the way that that's been written actually is very effective. The way that she talks about this body, she says that the body moved to look out the window, for example. She doesn't talk about it as if it's her body belonging to her. There are then two characters who are helping Sidra acclimatise to life. I'll give you some proper thoughts once I'm a little further into this, but yeah, I'm really glad that this came up as the next spin because it's one that I've been meaning to get around to. Happy Monday. I am in such a good reader mood at the moment. I read so much yesterday. I made it to the halfway point. In fact, I'm about 60% of the way through A Closed and Common Orbit, and I think this is going to be another 5 stars. If that is the case, then that means that out of the last 5 books that I've read physically, 4 of them will have been 5 stars. How is this happening? I'm not complaining because obviously that's great. I am loving reading at the moment, and I'm just so excited every time I get to pick up a new book because I'm just really enjoying everything that I read right now. If you don't know, this series is a cozy sci-fi series. It's set way into the future where humans have left Earth, gone out into the galaxy and met different alien races, different species. And what I love about this series is how Becky Chambers writes with a lot of compassion and empathy. There are characters who come across people very different to themselves, and they have to work out how to communicate, and they make a real effort in most cases to understand other cultures, and it's just so lovely. What I like about this book actually compared to the first book is in the first book you were following a bigger cast of characters, you were following the crew of this ship, and it was great. I loved the found family, but I think because you were moving around quite a lot, it meant that I never felt particularly close to the individual characters, whereas in this it's a much smaller cast of characters, so I do feel a bit closer to them. I've already mentioned Sidra, but there's another character that we're following called Jane, who is a young girl growing up on this planet where children are used as labour in these factories. Her character in particular and how her character is written, I think it's been written so accurately. The trauma that she's gone through, I have a feeling that this book is going to make me cry before I get to the end. I just love these characters. This isn't even a fast-paced book, it's just these characters have grabbed me and I just can't stop reading every time I pick it up. So I am probably gonna finish this tonight. According to my Kindle, I have about 2.5 hours left, and I think I will easily get through that this evening because, like I said, I'm just enjoying reading so much right now. I really want to read more books by Becky Chambers after I finish this series. I did try and read the Monk and Robot series. I can't remember the name of the first book. I tried to listen to the audiobook and I got about an hour in and realised that I hadn't taken any of it in, so I need to try that, but maybe read it physically. I know that this is an older series now, so I'm a little bit late to the game, but I'm annoyed at myself that I didn't read it sooner because it's shaping up to be one of my favourite series of all time. This was actually one of the first series that was recommended to me when I said that I wanted to get into sci-fi. Can you imagine if I'd read it at the time? To be fair, if I'd read this around 5 or 6 years ago, though, I don't know whether I would have loved it as much, because I don't think I was really into cozy character-driven stories as much back then, but now this is very much what I want to be reading. I have now finished A Closed Uncommon Orbit by Becky Chambers, and to no one's surprise, I'm giving this 5 stars. This was fantastic. It did make me cry. I got very emotional multiple times throughout this book. I did think that the plot was a little bit shoehorned in at the end, but the point of the book isn't the plot, okay? The point is the characters, and the characters in this I thought were just, I don't even know how to explain it, but it just really impacted me emotionally. And I think that if you are looking for something really cozy, would really recommend this series. I like how each of the books wraps up like a standalone, so I don't mind waiting a few months before continuing this series, because I don't think, looking at the synopsis, I don't think that the third book has any relation to books 1 and 2. From what I gather, the books are set within this same universe. I mean, it's our universe, but way in the future, but the books are all set within the same universe. You have the same types of alien species and the same cultures, but the core group of characters that you follow in are different. So yeah, so happy that I loved this. I loved this even more than the first book, and I gave the first book 5 stars, and I've just talked about it in my mid-year freakout tag, saying it's my favourite book of the year, so that should tell you how much I adored this. I have now done the next roll, so I'm going to insert that footage here. I knew at some point we were going to get a book that is a little bit chunkier, because I did put some chunky fantasy books onto this spinner wheel, and yeah, we landed on The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch, which is the 3rd book in the Gentleman Bastard series. I always want to call this the Lies of Loch Lamora series, but that's the name of the 1st book. The name of the series is The Gentleman Bastards, and I have been enjoying this series. I read the 2nd book when I went to Croatia last year, which I think was around September or October, and all I can remember is that I liked it, but it took me ages to read, because these books are quite slow. I do think they balance the plot and the characters quite well though. Also, if you are curious about this series, it's available on Kindle Unlimited in the UK, so I will not be reading this version. I think this is the broken binding version. This is my partner's copy, so I'm not 100% sure, but I am going to be reading this on my Kindle because I can't be reading heavy hardbacks, okay? In this series, we are following Loch Lamora, who, when he was a child, he was, I don't know how to explain it, but he was raised to be a thief and a con artist. So throughout this series, you're following a group of con artists as they're pulling off different heists. Best way I can explain it. That's what the 1st book is about anyway. And yeah, I liked the 1st book, gave it 4 stars. Liked the 2nd book, gave it a slightly lower 4 stars. So I'm hoping I enjoy this 3rd book. This isn't a completed series, however, each book does wrap up the contained plot within that particular book. So there's like an ongoing story throughout all of the books, or at least the first 2 books, there was like an ongoing plot. The 2nd book also had a bit of a cliffhanger at the end, so I'm really interested to see how that continues in book 3. I have started this, but I've only read like 5 pages, so I literally have nothing to tell you about it so far. I will try and check in with you over the weekend. It's currently Thursday, and apparently we're in for some more hot weather over the weekend. I'm struggling, okay? Like, it's been in the mid to late 20s this week, and apparently it's going to be 33 degrees on Saturday, and I'm going into town. Normally, when the weather is that hot, I would just stay at home, but I'm getting my hair cut on Saturday, and then on Sunday I'm meeting a friend for lunch, so I can't escape it. It's going to be horrible, but hopefully not too horrible. The weather's going to be horrible, but my plans are exciting. Hi everyone, happy Friday. I am so glad that it's Friday today, because I did not sleep very well last night. I didn't fall asleep until probably gone midnight, and then I woke up around 6 when my partner left for work. So it's been a very slow morning. It's just gone 12:30, I think. I'm on my lunch break. I went out for a walk this morning though. I decided I wanted to be productive. I knew I wasn't going to want to go for a walk on my lunch break because it's way too hot. I just checked the thermostat and it's like 26 degrees in my flat, so I don't want to know how hot it is outside annoyed, but thankfully I went this morning, which was lovely, and then I watched YouTube for like an hour before I started work. The reason I was awake quite late last night is because I was finishing part 1 of the Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch, the third Lives of Loch Lamora book. You know what book I'm reading. I'll put it on the screen because I can't be bothered to find the hardback, and I'm reading this on my Kindle anyway. I don't think I did the best job of explaining what this series is about, but all you need to know is the main character is called Loch Lamora and he is a con artist. What I like about this particular book is we're getting some flashbacks to his past and his childhood, which I'm fairly sure we also got in the first book. In fact, I'm confident we had the flashbacks in the first book. I can't remember about the second book though, but in this book we're getting 2 timelines, one in the past and one in the present day when Locke, I think he's in his 30s, but in the past he's like 10 or even younger than that when that timeline first starts. So that past timeline has been really interesting because we're seeing more of his childhood than we've seen in the previous books. It's also helping to refresh my memory of things that I've forgotten from the previous 2 books. These books are written so that they each have like a self-contained plot, but this one is kind of linking back to some stuff that happened in the first book, and my memory was a little bit fuzzy on that, so I feel like I've got a good grasp of it now. Loch Lamora, I think, is a really great character because he's very capable, he's very clever, he's seen as the clever one of the group, and he's able to think quickly, and that obviously comes in handy when he finds himself in a sticky situation. However, he gets himself into sticky situations. I don't want to say he's flawed, I mean he is flawed, but sometimes he misjudges a situation and sometimes he makes mistakes, and I find that really satisfying in a character when they aren't like completely useless. It's not like you're being told, oh, this person is really clever, but then their actions don't follow through on that. He is clever and he's very capable, but he's also human, and I just really like him as a character. I don't want to tell you who my favourite character is because I feel like 3 books into a series you might not want to know what characters are still around, but what I like about this book is we're getting more of a certain character who has been mentioned, but we didn't really know loads about them, and yeah, I'm really interested in the direction that the plot is going in. I feel like the first third of this book has really focused on establishing the situation, like there's a new mission or heist that these characters are going to be working on, and yeah, it's a little bit political. It involves them inserting themselves into the politics of a particular city, and yeah, I am very interested in this plot, so this is going well. I don't know whether it's going to be a 5 stars because I haven't given any of the previous books 5 stars. They were both 4 stars for me. Out of all of the books in the series though, this one has been the easiest to get into in my opinion. The only criticism I have is sometimes the transitions between the scenes feel a bit clunky, like something will happen and then very quickly something else will happen and I'll think, whoa, like where has this come from? Very, very small issue. The pacing, I think, generally has been great. I feel like I'm reading this way quicker than I read the other 2 books. I think I started it like 2 days ago and I'm already a third of the way through. I was expecting this to take me like two weeks to finish, and by the current pace, I think it's going to take me like a week, which is great. I have to leave the house in about 5 or 10 minutes because I'm meeting a friend for lunch, but I thought I would check in with you first because I got my haircut yesterday. I don't know if you can really tell from this angle. I will have inserted some clips into the vlog for you to see, but I got my haircut yesterday and it feels so much better. I can actually wear it down and not feel like I'm wearing a wig on my head because it was just not fun. Like the last few days, this weekend in particular, the weather has been a lot, and I'm ready for it to be over now. Sorry if that sounds miserable, but I'm not a hot weather kind of person, unless I'm on holiday and I can just go and jump in the sea or a pool. Even then though, I tend to sit in the shade because I burn really easily. I'm rambling and I don't have that much time. So I am 2/3 of the way through The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch, and I'm really enjoying this. I think this is actually my favourite book in the series so far, which I wasn't expecting. I mean, maybe I should have expected it, because I guess the further that you get into a series, the more connected you feel to the characters, and obviously I don't tend to continue series unless I actually enjoy the first few books. This, yeah, does feel like my favourite in the series so far. I am a little confused though, because the plot that was promised in the beginning hasn't really started to happen yet, so I don't know. I feel like I should be halfway through the book instead of 2/3 of the way through, but we'll see how things wrap up in this final third. I'm really hoping this doesn't end on a cliffhanger. This particular book came out over 10 years ago, and I think there's meant to be another one. I don't know whether the fourth book is going to be the final book, but I'm sure I heard that there's going to be a short story collection coming out soon, and it's the first time that anything new has been published in this series since The Republic of Thieves came out. So yeah, I feel like I am reading this series, hopefully, at a good time. I feel like I'm appreciating the humour a lot more as well in this book. This is quite a funny series. It has that dry, witty humour that does tend to work for me. Certain lines haven't really landed, but I'm finding that I'm laughing out loud a lot more in this book in comparison to the previous two books. I like both timelines. We have a timeline in the past and a timeline in the present day. I will say I think I'm a little more invested in the present day timeline, because I'm not the biggest fan of teenage angst, even when it's written in a really accurate and awkward way. I'm just not the biggest fan of following teenage boys who are crushing on a girl. That's just not something that I would choose to read, but I can appreciate that it's written well. I reckon I'm going to finish this either tonight or tomorrow. Probably not tonight, because I don't know what time I'm going to get home from lunch, but I reckon I can finish this early in the week, and then I will let you know my final thoughts. But so far this is going really well, considering how big this book was. When the spinner wheel landed on this, I was a little bit nervous that it was going to take me like 2 weeks to read, and it's not at all. I'm flying through it. So I have finished The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch, and I'm going to give this 4 stars. It's a very strong 4 stars. At one point I thought it could be a 5, however, as much as I liked the characters and the banter and I was just really entertained, the plot was not great. It was a little underwhelming, and it's a shame because I think that the plot had so much potential. You have these 2 plots running side by side, one in the present day which is involving a political campaign, and then one in the past which is to do with a play called The Republic of Thieves. And the past timeline I started to find really boring. Like, some aspects were fun, but all of the parts to do with the play, I found it a real slog to get through those chapters. Most of this book actually focuses on a romantic relationship, which I wasn't expecting it to be that much of a focus, considering the first 2 books had either no romance or very little romance. I was surprised by how much of a focus was put on the romantic relationship in this. It wasn't the best written romance that I've ever read, but it was interesting. Like, I was compelled to keep on reading to find out what was going to happen between these characters. So yeah, mixed feelings, mostly positive in terms of my enjoyment. It was just the plot that I think let it down. It didn't have the clever moments or the satisfying moments where something is revealed and you think, okay, you know, something is clicking into place. That's why I think the previous 2 books were just a little bit stronger on the plot, but I felt more connected to the characters in this 3rd book. This is the last book that is currently out in the Gentleman Bastard series. I've been trying to research when the next book is coming out, and I believe a short story collection is coming first. That was announced, I think, last year, so I'm hoping that will come out at some point in the next year, and then the 4th book is going to be due sometime after that. I did decide to do another spin just out of curiosity. I wanted to see what it landed on, and it landed on The Heroes by Joe Abercrombie, which is a book that I have no interest in reading right now. This is the next book that I need to read in the First Law universe, and I actually DNF'd this book 2 years ago because I got halfway through and I wasn't taking anything in, and I felt like I wasn't giving the book a fair chance. So I do want to go back to it at some point, but now is not the time. So we are going to be wrapping up this reading vlog here. Let me know in the comments how many series you've finished this year, how many series you've continued in, if that's something that you track. I feel like this vlog has been really successful. We had 3 stars, 2 5-stars, and a very strong 4 stars. It's also felt really productive. I feel like my reading so far this month has felt so productive because of the number of series that I've continued in. So I definitely want to do this again at some point. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Click subscribe if you'd like to see more videos from me. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye.